Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
And now listen. It's well past midnight, and these words I'm scribbling might make little sense in the morning. The ink bleeds through the thin pages of this old notebook, like my memories pushing through to the surface. I haven't opened this diary in years. Used to be my safe place for random thoughts during college. Back then, I'd write down ideas for investing strategies or notes on how to budget for a future life I dreamed of. But tonight, I'm pouring out a different kind of calculation, one that has nothing to do with numbers or finance, and everything to do with heartbreak. I never saw myself as a man who'd keep a diary. That always felt too vulnerable. But I guess all men get to a point in life where the words must come out or else they'll eat us alive. So here I am, a grown man with a mortgage and 2 kids, huddled by a table lamp. I haven't really slept for days, and I need to get this out before my mind tears itself apart. The story might feel jumbled, like a film reel spinning too fast, because that's exactly how it's felt to me. Events collided, time lurched forward, and I just stood there, numb. Inside, everything froze, and I couldn't seem to make sense of it all. We'd moved to the suburbs of Chicago 5 years ago, Alicia and me. The plan was simple: find a bigger house near decent schools for the kids, keep my job as an investment manager stable, and watch our life unfold in neat, happy chapters. American dream, you know. The one you read about in brochures. The clean green lawn, a couple of children playing with a golden retriever, which we never got. And the sense that you'd conquered at least some small corner of life. If someone had told me that everything would come crashing down, that the woman I vowed to love till death would tear away my sanity like an old bandage, I'd have called them crazy. But here we are. And the heartbreak feels so primal. It's like I'm stuck in quicksand, sinking inch by inch while the rest of the world goes about its business. It all started small, a crack so faint you'd miss it if you didn't pay attention. Maybe I should have noticed earlier. Maybe my mind tried to tell me. But I kept ignoring it, telling myself, no, not Alicia. She's the one who used to put little sticky notes on my laptop. Asterisk, you got this. Asterisk or asterisk, come home soon. We miss you. Asterisk, she was the sunshine in every room. For me, for the kids, for her friends. How could that radiant woman betray us? The short answer: I don't know. Or maybe I do, but I'd rather not face it. Anyway, here's how it all unraveled. I'd been working late a lot, dealing with clients from overseas. I'd get home, exhausted, wanting nothing but a shower and a bed. She'd say a quick hello, then vanish into her phone or hurry off to do some freelance project. I thought it was normal post-kids routine, a kind of lull that hits marriages. Sex was sporadic. Conversations were short. We had a million little tasks to handle, from paying bills to scheduling doctor appointments. Maybe we lost sight of each other in the day-to-day shuffle. The first real warning sign came from my neighbor, old Mr. Hanson, who lives on the 3rd floor of our apartment complex. We had a house, but also an attached multi-unit. It's complicated. The point is, the old man had a vantage point of our comings and goings. He'd talk to me sometimes on the front steps, kindly if a bit blunt. One morning, he whispered, "Hey, John, did you notice your wife left earlier today in a shirt? Wasn't yours, was it?" His tone was apologetic, as though he was sorry for even mentioning it. I remember blinking at him, not fully grasping what he'd said. "What do you mean, not my shirt?" I asked. He just looked away, fiddling with the handle of his cane, then repeated, "Didn't look like yours. Thought you should know." I should have asked more questions, but in that instant, all I managed was a weak nod. Then I went off to work, the idea swirling in my head. Why the hell would Alicia wear some random shirt to leave the house? The next days came with more subtle hints. She started giving me odd explanations for her whereabouts. I'm meeting an old friend, or I need to pick up a friend's child from the station. Like puzzle pieces that didn't quite fit, but I forced them in anyway. Eventually, the truth slapped me in the face with the force of a train. I got home one afternoon, unusually early, thanks to a canceled client call. The house was quiet, the kids at school, bright midday, sun streaming through the windows. Alicia's car was in the driveway, so I expected she'd be inside, maybe sorting laundry or finishing a freelance project. I called her name. Silence. I wandered through the hallway, then up the stairs to our bedroom. The door was half open. She was there, all right. And she wasn't alone. I saw him first by the reflection in the wardrobe mirror, a tall figure, shirtless, with short dark hair. My heart pounded so violently I thought I might pass out. Alicia was pinned against him, her blouse half undone, her breathing ragged. One of his hands clutched her waist, the other cupped her face. She arched her neck and let out a gasp that crashed around me like thunder. A wave of nausea hit me. My legs threatened to buckle. Part of me wanted to scream, to rush in swinging fists, but I froze, completely froze. I watched them for a moment that felt like an eternity, though I'm sure it lasted only seconds. It was humiliating, seeing my wife's fingers dig into another man's back, seeing her lips parted for him, the raw heat in her eyes that once was reserved for me alone, her hair tangled around her shoulders, their bodies pressed tight. I wish I could say I roared and attacked him, that I fought for my honor or something. But the truth is, I just stood there, numb, paralyzed. When she noticed me, her eyes snapped wide, and she let out a stifled cry, scrambling to cover herself. He turned around, confusion twisting his features, like he was caught in the wrong scene of a play. He grabbed his shirt off the floor, chest still heaving from the rush of adrenaline. I don't remember the exact words. Alicia might have said something like, "John, oh my God, I'm so sorry." I think I whispered, "You're with him." Something pathetic like that. Then, with a voice I barely recognized as my own, I said, "Get out." It was dull, almost disembodied. The man, who I later confirmed was Mike Roberts, a manager at some travel firm, looked at me, looked at her, and then muttered, "I should leave," as if it was the most logical statement in the universe. He pulled on his jeans, buckled his belt, and hurried past me without even making eye contact. When the front door slammed shut, Alicia and I were alone in that suffocating bedroom. She tried to approach me, her hands trembling, face pale, blouse still hanging loose. "John, please," she murmured, reaching out. "Let me explain." I took a step back, raising a hand as if warding off a blow. My voice came out in a breathy hiss. "You don't touch me." Then I walked downstairs, slid on my coat, and left the house. My body was shaking, but inside I felt frozen, like some lifeless thing. I drove. I drove for hours. No destination, just the highway, passing cars and open fields, as if the asphalt might lead me out of my own skin. That night, I parked behind a dimly lit pharmacy, stumbled inside, bought a DNA test kit. It sounds insane, but a thought had snaked into my head. My youngest child, the infant who came a year ago, was she even mine? My mind replayed that neighbor's remark, Alicia's distance, all the red flags I'd ignored. I remember telling myself, "This is paranoia, John. Don't go there." She wouldn't do that. But clearly, she'd do something. I hadn't known Alicia's capacity for betrayal until that afternoon. The test results took a week. In that time, Alicia tried to talk, to apologize, to cry, to promise me the sky and the moon if I would just hear her out. I barely responded. I roamed the house like a ghost, occasionally forcing myself to smile for our two older kids so they wouldn't suspect. They knew something was off, kids always do, but I kept them in the dark. At night, Alicia and I slept in separate rooms. A couple of times, I caught her sobbing behind a locked bathroom door. I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt too much. The pain was so huge, it became numbness, if that makes sense. The day the test results came in, I drove to an empty lot behind a strip mall, locked myself in the car, turned the AC to max, just so the hum of the fan might drown out my own thoughts. I ripped open the envelope, saw the words, probability of paternity, 0%. That's it. The infant was not mine. I stared at that line, reading it over and over, as if maybe the letters would rearrange themselves into a better truth. They didn't. I remember letting out a half laugh, half sob, more like a cough. My eyes stung, but I refused to cry. Inside, something was screaming, but on the outside, I just flicked the paper away, turned off the ignition, and sat there until I couldn't stand the silence anymore. When I got home, Alicia was in the kitchen, a phone in her hand, biting her lip anxiously. The moment she saw me, she asked in a small, trembling voice, "Where did you go?" I held up the result. "I did a DNA test," I said, words clipped, voice flat. Her face went white. She choked out, "Why would you?" Then she saw the expression on my face, and her eyes flooded with tears. She started wailing, "John, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. It just happened. I was lonely, and you were never around." She kept rambling. I looked at her, feeling a strange pity mixed with fury. Then the black humor bubbled up inside me. I forced a grin, one that felt twisted and unnatural on my face, and said, "You sure you only got lonely once? Because the test can't be that wrong." She sobbed harder, covering her mouth. I let the laugh come, a hollow, bitter laugh that left a metallic taste on my tongue. That was my first taste of revenge, or at least the prelude to it. Letting her see me crack a joke about the situation, see how black it could get inside me. We didn't speak more that night. The older kids stayed in their room, silent. They must have heard her sobbing, my footsteps pacing the hall, the tension thick as a cloud of smoke. Alicia tried to knock on my door once. I told her, "Not now." That was it. The next day, I arranged a meeting with her father. A proud man from the West Coast, he'd raised Alicia practically single-handedly after her mother passed. He and I had always been friendly, though not extremely close. I showed up at his place unannounced, holding the printout of Alicia's messages with that manager, Mike. Some lines so explicit they burned a hole in my brain. Things like "my boss of pleasure," nonsense that made my stomach churn. I dropped them on the coffee table, stared at him, and said, "You raised this." The words came out almost in a whisper, but he heard every syllable. He didn't reply. Just sat there, shoulders sagging, eyes fixed on the lines of text. That was enough. I left, feeling no triumph, just a cold emptiness where my rage should have been. 2 days later, Alicia tried to corner me in our bedroom. "Let me explain," she said, voice shaking. "It was just, I needed someone to notice me. You're always gone. You never see me anymore." Then Mike started flirting. It got out of hand. "I didn't plan to have a baby from him." She broke off, pressing a hand over her mouth as tears streamed down. I lied about the dates. "I thought if you believed it was yours, everything would be okay." I panicked. I repeated her words quietly, like in a trance. "You needed someone to notice you. You panicked. You thought it'd be okay." My voice was so soft, it scared her. Then I looked her in the eye. "Congratulations. You got his notice all right." She crumpled to the floor, shoulders shaking with sobs. I walked out, closed the door. The official meltdown happened soon after. I told Alicia I'd be taking our real children, our older two, and leaving. The baby, biologically not mine, would stay with her. She insisted it didn't matter, that I was still the father in her eyes. We could raise the child together. We could fix it somehow. It sounded insane to me. I was a rational man. Numbers, percentages, probabilities. There was a 0% chance I'd invest my entire life in a lie. My first steps were methodical. I got the necessary legal documents, talked to a lawyer about establishing paternity for the older kids, ensuring custody. I found a small place across town, Not fancy, but enough for me and them. Then I started packing in silence. The day I left, Alicia followed me to the driveway, carrying the baby in her arms. The baby. The child who looked so innocent, but reminded me of betrayal incarnate. She stood there, crying. Her tears were a torrent, but I felt as though I was behind glass, separate from it all. Our older kids were already buckled in my car. I closed the trunk, turned to Alicia, and said, "Nothing." Words died in my throat. She clutched the baby tighter, eyes pleading, lips trembling. The emptiness in me echoed. I got in the car, started the engine, and pulled away. My last glimpse in the rearview mirror was Alicia standing alone, baby cradled to her chest, an empty stroller by her feet. She didn't chase after me. Maybe she knew I was done. In the following days, I orchestrated my revenge more systematically. It wasn't a screaming, flaming retribution. I'm not that kind of man. I used her texts, her confessions, and the negative paternity result to ensure I got sole custody of my 2 kids. I made sure to freeze joint accounts, to the extent that was legal, so she'd feel the pinch. She tried to beg, tried to get her father to call me, but the old man was too ashamed to push me. Once the settlement was hammered out, I left her with minimal financial support. Just enough so that no court would blame me for total neglect. Cruel, perhaps, but the black humor inside me whispered. Asterisk, she needs someone to notice her, right? Let's see if the manager can pay the bills. Asterisk, the part of me that used to be a mild, decent husband was gone. I recognized that I was punishing her because I couldn't let myself truly forgive. Maybe I was punishing us both. Mike, the so-called lover, tried to reach out once. He left me a voicemail, stumbling through an apology. "Man, I never meant. Alicia never said. I'm sorry. This got complicated." It was pitiful. I listened to it while leaning against the wall in my new place. The kids were asleep in their rooms, half-unpacked boxes around me. I realized I had no desire to talk to him, no desire to fight him. The worst revenge was not punching him, but letting him see how unbelievably small he'd become in my eyes, so I deleted the message. That was that. In the midst of this, I felt something ugly growing inside me. A part of me wanted to die, truly. At night, I'd stare at the blank ceiling and think, asterisk, wouldn't it be easier just to vanish? Asterisk, but my kids needed me. So I kept waking up. I immersed myself in their routines, driving them to school, cooking dinners that ended up half-burned, reading them bedtime stories with a forced grin. They were too young to fully grasp the complexity, but old enough to sense the tension. My older one asked, "Dad, why isn't Mom with us?" I told him we needed space, that sometimes grown-ups need to figure things out. He accepted it, but he's no fool. Kids are never fools. The black humor became my coping mechanism. I found myself making sarcastic comments under my breath, like when I'd fix a wobbly table leg in the new apartment. Great, at least something here can be fixed. Or when coworkers asked, "How's the family, John?" I'd shrug, smaller than before, but lighter to carry. They'd stare, not sure if it was a joke or not. I'd give that twisted grin again. Maybe I was losing my mind a little, but the alternative was drowning in tears, and I refused to let Alicia's betrayal reduce me to a sobbing wreck. Meanwhile, Alicia tried different methods to see me. She pleaded for therapy, for a second chance. She left long voicemails, messages where she sobbed and said she'd do anything to atone. She even tried to show up at my apartment once. I let her stand outside the door while I listened from inside, my hand pressed against the wood. She whispered, "I'm so sorry, John. Just let me see them." But I didn't open. I was too afraid of breaking down, of losing that tight knot of anger that was holding me together. I guess that was my brand of vengeance, locking her out of our lives. I told myself she deserved it. Her father called me once, sounding tired and old. "Son, I'm not saying what she did is right. I'm just asking you to remember she's still their mother. I thanked him for the concern and hung up. I couldn't let go of my fury, not then. I'd love to say I found peace quickly, that an epiphany arrived, telling me forgiveness was the key to healing. But that's not the man I was. Day after day, I festered in resentment. My nights filled with nightmares of Alicia in bed with Mike, sweaty bodies tangling. I'd jolt awake, soaked in sweat, chest tight with rage. My head pounded with a single refrain. Asterisk, she did this to us. She did this to me. Asterisk, and in the morning, I'd go through the motions. Make breakfast, drive the kids, answer emails, talk to clients, pick up groceries, fill out soccer registration forms for the older one. Life rolled on, mechanical and suffocating, with me wearing a mask of normalcy. At times, my mind drifted to the possibility of harming myself, just to put an end to the swirl of pain. But each time, I'd picture my kids' faces, how lost they'd be. I couldn't do that to them. So I endured. The day I filed the final custody paperwork was the day a curious thing happened. I felt a flicker of relief, as if some part of me said, "Now you're safe, John. No one can take your kids from you." And that flicker slowly grew. I started noticing small joys. Hearing my children laugh while they kicked a soccer ball on the lawn, or the taste of a fresh cup of coffee before sunrise. Little moments that reminded me I was still alive. My black humor eased a bit, replaced by a cautious acceptance of what had happened. Naturally, I still harbored a quiet hatred for Alicia, but it wasn't as raw. More like a dull ache in my gut. She wrote me letters, long, handwritten confessions. I read them once or twice, then tore them up. She admitted everything, said the relationship with Mike started as harmless flirting, then turned physical, then spiraled into a pregnancy she was too scared to admit wasn't mine. She apologized 1,000 times in different ways. Each letter ended with, "I know you'll never forgive me, but I love you." Those words meant little now. The woman I'd loved had died the moment I saw her with him. Then came the day I saw Alicia in the grocery store. She was in the produce section, the baby in a sling against her chest. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked thinner, paler, and exhausted. I felt a jolt in my stomach. I wanted to turn around and leave, but our eyes locked. She stood there, frozen. The baby fussed a little. I walked closer, aware of how surreal it felt. My heart pounded, but I didn't show it. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked so small, so pathetic. Something in me flicked. I realized she was paying a high price, too. I nodded at her, said a stiff, "Hi," she whispered, "Hi." We stood in silence for a moment. She clutched the baby as if to shield herself. My older kids weren't with me that day, which was probably for the best. Then, out of nowhere, I found myself scanning the baby. I saw her big dark eyes and a tuft of brown hair. A wave of conflicting emotions hit me. I felt sorry for that child. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. I forced myself to look away. Alicia tried to speak, tears in her eyes. I couldn't do it. I just said, "Take care," and left, cart squeaking down the aisle. That night, I sat in my small bedroom, the kids already asleep, and thought about my next move. I had all the revenge I wanted. Full custody, a life separate from Alicia, her father's silent shame. The finances were in my control, but still, the bitterness lingered. Was I truly living, or was I stuck, floating in the aftermath of my own vengeance? I wrote in my diary, "Asterisk, I can't let her ruin me. I have to live for the kids. The next step is to bury this somehow." Asterisk, that was the turning point. Not forgiveness. No, that was too tall an order. More like acceptance. Accepting that I'd never get a rational explanation for her actions. Accepting that the baby was Mike's and not mine. And that Alicia would forever be the mother of my older two, whether I liked it or not. Time started to move in normal increments again. I got better at my job, focusing on new projects and receiving a promotion. I was able to afford a bigger apartment, one with an extra room for the kids. We decorated it together. Life found a routine. And in that routine, I began to see glimpses of who I used to be. Once in a while, I could even laugh with genuine warmth, especially when my older one told me about his day at school in that earnest, comedic way kids do. My father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, sent me a text once. Asterisk, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I'm glad you and the kids are well. I'm sorry for everything. Asterisk, I read it, exhaled. That was all. I replied, asterisk, thank you. We're getting by. Asterisk, short. Enough. As for Mike Roberts, I hardly thought of him, except as a passing joke I might tell myself when alone in the car. Something like, where's your boss of pleasure now, Alicia? The black humor would still pop up, but I didn't dwell on him. My real fury had always been with her. Of course, Alicia tried to see the kids. The courts gave her visiting rights. The first time I allowed them to go with her for a weekend, I paced my apartment nonstop. When she dropped them off, she looked at me with eyes that screamed 1,000 apologies. I pretended not to notice. The kids were fine, if a bit tense, but they said, Mom cried a lot. I just nodded, gave them dinner, and put them to bed. In the silence of the night, I stared at my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. My hair was a little thinner, new lines etched into my face, like I'd aged 10 years in a few months. But there was a flicker of life in my eyes again. That was the night I truly felt how my revenge had shaped me. I realized it cost me something, maybe a piece of my soul. But I also realized I was still standing. The dream of an intact family was dead. But I was breathing, and I had to keep going. The next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee, leaning against the kitchen counter, letting the steam warm my face. An odd clarity washed over me. I remembered the first day I met Alicia, how she laughed when we shared fries at a burger joint by the beach. The memory wasn't bitter this time. It was a piece of the past, from a different life. I wasn't that man anymore, and she wasn't that woman. We'd both change, for better or worse, and maybe that's just how life goes. I decided to let a bit of grace slip in. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but a small letting go. I texted Alicia, asked if she needed anything for the kids next weekend with her. She responded with a cautious, thank you for asking. We arranged details calmly. My chest felt hollow, but also lighter, as if I'd set down some invisible weight. And so the days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My new normal took shape. I worked, I parented, I tried to carve out a path forward. The older kids adjusted. They had therapy sessions. I attended a few with them. We talked about new boundaries, about how families sometimes transform. The therapist used words like co-parenting, shared responsibilities, and healthy distance. I listened, absorbing the strange new vocabulary. Maybe a small part of me felt proud that, despite it all, I was capable of doing the right thing for them. Eventually, Alicia and I met in person, just the two of us, in a public park. The kids were at school. We sat on a bench, wind rustling the trees overhead. She asked about them, I answered. She said she was sorry for everything, that she wished she could turn back time. I believed her, but I also told her it didn't matter now. The damage was done, the pieces scattered. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, nodded. Then came a moment of silence, the kind that holds 1,000 unspoken regrets. I looked at her, at the faint lines on her forehead, the sadness in her gaze. That face used to be my home. Now it was just a familiar stranger's, and I felt the strange urge to laugh, some dark, ironic laugh that would sum up the entire tragedy. But I kept it inside and instead said, at least let's be civil, for the kids' sake. She agreed, voice trembling. We parted ways. I walked off, feeling not good, but not entirely broken either. Like a man stepping back into his own body after a long absence. I guess that's the final shape of revenge. It ends, eventually. When the dust settles, You're left with whatever you've built in its wake. My choice was to build a life that made sense for me and my children. Alicia had to figure out her own path, with or without Mike. I didn't ask about him, didn't care. She never mentioned him, either. Possibly he was gone, or maybe they were sneaking around. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I'd be lying if I said the pain just vanished. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding with the memory of her pressed against him. The betrayal slices through my dreams like a jagged knife. But each time, I breathe, remind myself it's over. I'm living a new chapter now. Messy, unpredictable, and shaped by a past I can't erase, but can learn to handle. So that's the story. That's what I've scrawled here in my battered old diary tonight, though I've left out a million small details and 1,000 tears. If you're still listening, still reading, congratulations. You made it to the end of a tale I never wanted to star in. But life doesn't ask for auditions, does it? Sometimes it just grabs you by the collar and hurls you onto the stage. I guess the final question is, am I okay? Some days, yes. Some days, no. But I'm alive, and I have these two incredible kids who look at me with trust in their eyes. That's enough to keep me going. Enough to make me want to see the next sunrise. The revenge I took on Alicia, stripping her of the life we built together, forcing her to face her father's disapproval, leaving her in that driveway with a baby that wasn't mine, brought me some twisted satisfaction. But in the process, a part of me died too. Perhaps that's the price we pay when we deliver vengeance. A chunk of our own soul ends up as collateral damage. Now, though, I'm ready to start living again. That's why I'm closing this diary, finishing this last line. I'm done rehashing it in ink. Tomorrow is a new day. I might fail at a lot of things, but I'll keep breathing, keep laughing. Yes, even if it's that strange black humor that gets me through tough times. Because sometimes, that's all a man has left. The ability to laugh at the dark. End of entry. Time to get some sleep, if I can. And if you ever find yourself here, reading these words, take them as a warning or a lesson. Once betrayal strikes, there's no going back to who you were, but there is a way forward, if you're willing to survive your own anger. That's where I'm heading now. I close the notebook. Tomorrow, I'll burn these pages or shove them in a drawer. I can't decide yet, but at least for tonight, I said what needed saying. And now, I'm finally done.